Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbong. Today we've got two books that deal in their own ways with this feeling of not being able to say the thing you want to say, especially if you're a woman. In a bit, we'll hear from comedian, actor, and writer Jenny Slate, who has since shed this feeling and now shows up to readings with her own harpist, apparently. But first, Kate Kennedy's memoir, One in a Millennial, is about girl and womanhood in a very specific time period. The internet is relatively new, MTV is still zeitgeisty, and female wants and desires are still dismissed. Kennedy spoke with NPR's Juana about how friendships were key in getting through this time, and how the expectations of growing up never quite meshed with the reality. That's ahead.
This message comes from Carvana. Whether you need weeks to research the perfect car or know exactly what you want, Carvana makes car buying easy. Choose from Carvana's massive inventory using customizable search tools. However you buy your car with Carvana.
Hi, I'm Catherine Marr, CEO of NPR, where we're guided by a bold mission to create a more informed public. Join us today by giving at donate.npr.org.
Millennials have experienced an interesting evolution of stereotypes.
Starting out in a place that was lazy, entitled, basement dwelling, and then the mid to late 2010s trend of saying we killed major industries and economic sectors like paper napkins or low-fat yogurt. And then to the 2020s where we kind of have been mocked by Gen Z for like side parts and skinny jeans.
That's Kate Kennedy. She's out with a new book called One in a Millennial on friendships, feelings, fangirls, and fitting in. Kennedy explores the experience of being a millennial woman, complete with references to AOL Instant Messenger, Going Out Tops, and the Spice Girls. But she also explores why we millennials get such a bad rep and where those stereotypes come from. She says we are a misunderstood generation.
When I got into the workplace in the early 2010s and people were saying millennials were lazy and entitled, I would notice things like, seeking more work-life balance being labeled as lazy or, calling us job hoppers. But when you graduate in the most severe, economic recession since the Great Depression, and you've never had a company be loyal to you, of course you're going to look out for your best interests.
As a fellow millennial, I found Kennedy's memoir deeply relatable, even though our life experiences were completely different.
I wanted to kind of revisit the pop culture and zeitgeisty elements that make us a product of our time, and wanted to detail the way we engage with that media and pop culture in real time and kind of reclaim the experiences of our girlhood that were easily written off as frivolous and unimportant.
Shared experiences of girlhood written off as frivolous. One example Kennedy gives, the iconic 2000s college getting ready ritual known as the pregame.
It was an interesting time where, for me in college, we would have these all-girl get-togethers that were, to me, electric. They were safe spaces where people would build you up and tell you how hot you looked, and we'd take pictures with our point-and-shoots dangling from our wrists that almost beautifully we couldn't post in real time, so we had to be present. And there was a lot of support found within those environments when we were getting ready, when we were building each other up. And, we jokingly would put up away messages that said things like, live for the nights you'll never remember with the friends you'll never forget. And the joke is, I forgot all the parties. The pregames to me are the main event far more than the event we were pregaming for.
When I was reading the part of your book where you talked about this particular fixture of our millennial life, it immediately made me think back to my days in a sorority at a big state school where I was trying really hard to fit in and not having the greatest time. And I just remember the women that I surrounded myself with being literally life-saving in some cases. And I mean, can you talk a little bit about this particular era of female friendships and what they mean and meant to you?
It's interesting when you're in a situation where people tell you that you're going to have the time of your life, but you don't feel like you are. But you can have good times when you're not having the time of your life. And for me, college was really challenging. I found it destabilizing, and I felt a little bit lost without the friends and places that made me who I was. And I think joining a sorority is an interesting thing where Greek life has its many issues that it should have evolved from, but it also provides you a sense of security and makes a big school much smaller. And while I now look back and laugh at, the late nights during recruitment or how many $12 t-shirts I was forced to pay for. I also acknowledge that without having those close relationships, I'm not sure how I would have gotten by. We were all finding ourselves and supporting each other the best way we could. And the thing you don't know about life is that as you get older, you don't have hours and hours to kill to just watch TV together. You don't get to wake up with all your friends and laugh about the previous night's events. And as your first glimpse of adulthood, you're almost misled to think you'll always get to live and exist with your friends. When you get older and everyone's lives divert, it's really never the same. And I think part of my fondness for that period of time is the longing for when we got to spend all of our time together supporting one another.
There is a thing that you point out over and over again in this book, and it's this idea of self-editing that we've been conditioned to do, particularly girls and young women. This idea that we downsize our feelings about the things that we love, particularly when we're talking about traditionally feminine and pop culture related interests, because we want to feel accepted and legitimate. And I have to say, as I was reading your book, it struck me that this is something that I still do today to some degree because I want to be seen as respected. Where do you think all of that comes from?
I think that it has even deeper origins when you think about women's interests being labeled as guilty pleasures or romance novels being trashy novels. In the book, I say, why did I let people who draft make-believe football teams make me believe my interests weren't important? It's not that sports aren't, it's that they're both valid forms of leisure. But feminine-coded interests typically get a harsher edit. And even dating back to the 50s when, soap operas were getting the most viewership, and they were showcasing the economic viability of female audiences. They were the only shows that weren't even reported and reviewed in newspapers because they weren't considered sophisticated enough. And I think that kind of represents the paradox of how much economic viability there is in feminine related interests, yet how oftentimes they aren't considered sophisticated or important by society. And it's just this interesting experience where in every single context, I found myself self-editing, whether it was when I was dating when I was younger or got to the workplace and we were doing icebreakers and they asked our favorite movie and I said How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And then I quickly realized, I should have said Citizen Kane. They're going to use this isolated pop culture reference to project onto my whole personality that I lack depth.
I want to end this conversation on a topic that you get into late in the book, and that's millennial motherhood. And you teased out something that I don't think we talk about enough, and that's how we, and by we I mean women in our 20s and 30s, are raised and talked to as though the path is really linear. You grow up, you go to college, you meet a partner who's normally a man in this telling, and get married, and then you have kids, and it is all presented as inevitable. But that's not always the case, and the feelings that come along with all of that are so intense and complicated.
They really are. In the book, I talk about the playground song, the love, marriage, baby carriage of it all, and how that is kind of the oversimplified way we look to our futures. And then when there are inevitable complexities with dating and finding a partner and the process of deciding if you want kids and the lack of control you have over if you're even able to have them, among other things, I think it becomes really clear when you get older that these things are not guaranteed. They're a product of both our choices and our chances. And, getting married and having kids may not be something you, one, desire. And you have to ask yourself, is this something that I really want or something that I always thought I'd have? And two, they're not always within our control. And I find that a lot of women beat themselves up about their relationship status or the difficulty of getting pregnant or experiencing loss as if they did something wrong. But I really think so often the tension we're feeling is a departure from our expectations.
That's Kate Kennedy, host of the podcast Be There in 5. Her memoir, One in a Millennial, is out now. Kate, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun, and thank you for reading the book and for sharing it with people.
All this year, NPR traveled the country, hearing from voters not just about the issues, but about their hopes for the country's future.
We should be able to disagree with each other without bullying each other into submission.
And what it means to be a part of a democracy. Invest in coverage that moves us forward together by giving today at donate.npr.org.
If that last interview was about growing up, this next one is about what it's like when you've actually grown up but still don't quite feel like it. Comedian and actor Jenny Slate's new book, Lifeform, is an essay collection about being single, finding love, having a kid, and yet in true Jenny Slate fashion, it's hilarious and weird. She spoke with Hirona's Emiko Tamagawa at a live event in Boston, and like I mentioned up top, she showed up with her own harpist. Here's the interview.
This is called True Love Garlic Chicken. I am in a restaurant, and what I am eating is mostly the wine. The woman next to me is telling her table mate about Norway and Stockholm and why it is worth traveling to these places.
Don't you want to be accompanied by a harp like all the time?
Yes.
Just have a harp follow you around?
Yes, but I don't want like a lute. You know what I mean? I don't want like one of those like Shakespeare guys with the like puffy pants and the skinny legs and the tiny little thing.
One thing that and it's really a chicken and the egg question. Did the pieces come first, or did you decide to write a book?
I asked to write a book. What came first were just like little visuals, basically. And if I could remember, or if I had the confidence, I would write them down. And like, it's actually crazy how much confidence it takes to just even write down an idea. At least for me, like I get the idea and I want to write it down, but there's also another part that is like, oh man, it'll feel so bad if this idea is stupid.
If that was the case, because the part being single, you have, I'm fine, I'm confident, I'm fine, I'm single, I'm okay. And then you have this other really like, I'm not okay. I mean, like, what was it like to go back into that space?
I think it's natural instinct for me to be like, how did I get here? I want to know why I am where I am. Like, what have I been doing to get myself here, both good and bad? So it was actually really energizing to go back into journals or little things that I was trying to write while I was single that I was like, it was too burdensome to try to finish. I really, really liked it because also I could see how far I had come. It's sort of like if you go back to your elementary school and you see how small the toilets are.
I know.
You're like, wow, I use the big one now.
Boy, were all the door handles really that low?
Totally.
But then comes the section of true love. And still again, it's like, how can I be so happy? And at one point you talk about dealing with the low expectations. What was it like to go back into that other? I mean, I'm just going through these spaces to get to where you are.
Yeah, in my last stand-up special, I talked a little bit about like having to be brave for love and like how freaky that is and having to try to just force yourself to make like new choices. But I actually was not done talking about that. And like I held, now I actually like feel okay about it, I think, from writing this book, but like a lot of shame over having trust issues, of like just being so afraid of being like betrayed. It was just like this like gigantic central fear that like someone would keep me in a relationship but like be lying to me. It was mine. It wasn't like, you know, something that my lovely partner was doing to me. And it was good to go back and write those things because sometimes, even if we get over stuff and we're like, phew, I'm so glad that I'm not like that anymore, we can just not want to talk about it at all. But I feel more comfortable being myself, knowing that I can say out loud, like, yeah, I used to be really scared and had like really a big struggle with feelings about self-worth. It was like very good for me to actually lay it all out and be like, this actually just is not as gross as you think it is.
Feels like you're trying to understand happiness. A number of years back, things just seemed so dark and unhappy, and you're doing something you didn't want to do. This seems to be like, I am doing what I want to do and coming to terms with that happiness.
Yeah, the feeling is like, oh, it looks like how it looks. You know, like, it really does. I think at this point, like the things that I want aren't outrageous to me. I don't know why I always use this example, but like, I don't want a jet ski, you know, not that if you have a jet ski, I don't have an issue with you. I'm just saying, like, I don't like actually want like big flashy things. I like what I want to have. Like, I want to like be an actor and be able to be in like 1 to 2 good movies a year, hopefully. And like, I want to be able to reupholster my couch when I want to, but just forever, I've always felt like there's a little bit of a price to pay. Like, you just shouldn't be allowed. It's just rude to be even privately happy. Not, that was a list of like possessions or situations. There used to be this feeling that like I could never hold it. Like I don't have that type of like cistern or system in me. A lot of writing this book was clearing things out and just showing myself actually how robust my systems of sustaining personal happiness are, but that they are like really weird, but they're the only ones that work. So I have to like feed them.
Also, the fears don't quite go away. They have different, I mean, the one thing that really struck me when you were talking about how when your daughter was born and they had to take her away, they had some issues and they wanted to deal with that. And you were talking about how I wanted to be everything. I want to be the one to help her. Now they're taking her away from me, and it's making you vulnerable, making you afraid.
Yeah, giving birth to my daughter is something like I'm really proud of, and I thought it was a very positive experience, and it was also one of the experiences in my life where I feel sorrow because I felt so much shame that it didn't go totally perfectly, and she was in the NICU, and I felt horrible about it. Mm-hmm. And you can hear that and be like, but you got over it. But it's like, no, I thought about it a lot. And like I had it with me for a long, long time until I wrote the piece that you're talking about, which I decided not to read tonight because sometimes it like makes me cry, and then I feel like that's cheesy because it's like, oh, she's crying at her own thing. How profound. She just shed a tear. So I don't know. But I really, really, really want to be able to prove that things can exist at once.
Yeah. You're so vulnerable on the page. Is there part of you that feels like saying, okay, this is the character Jenny that I've created?
No, I think this is what I'm like.
Okay.
It's really important to me, as much as I'm like, yes, let's be simultaneous. It's okay to like have ambivalence, duality, like multi things. It's cool, but that I like don't want to be different people to different people, like, or different person to different people or something. Like I think I can feel like pretty confident that my close friends that are here tonight are like, yeah, she seems like herself. Yeah, there's stuff in here that is personal and that for many people would be in the area of privacy that's private. But this all feels really good to me, to be connected and to be consistently myself, because I just think it would be really, really bad to know that people thought you were one way, but you're actually something else.
Right. Now you have a whole new life form to worry about. Do you still struggle with like having those fears sort of pop up?
Yeah. I think my old fears, I'm like so happy to say that a lot of things that I was afraid of maybe 5 years ago, I'm really not anymore. It's great to feel safe in your life. It's great to feel that you're like worthy of respect and you're given it. Like that's lovely. But there are things that I'm really, really scared of. They feel so much larger now. Like, I don't really understand what's like going on in culture. Like, I'm like, what is TikTok? I've never been on it. For the first time, I like have this sense of like, what if I'm on a super old ship? And like, that sound in movies, like with old ships where you just like hear the wood creak, like it's just like creaking in the middle of the ocean. Like, I'm like, am I completely, like, obviously we're all here tonight, like this is good, everything's like happening. I don't have like massive career concerns, but it's more of a feeling of like, do I still know who to perform for? Like, what's going on out there? How do I connect? If I don't want to do TikTok, if I don't like want to, like, I'm not really into that, am I allowed to like still be here? Like, I feel afraid of disconnection. So I have fears and gigantic concerns about like, does my daughter eat enough vegetables, Mm-hmm. Like, I'll try to tally up, like, did she have enough, like, broccoli and avocados can, like, make me faint. Like, I just want the best for her. Yeah. The fears are bigger, and they're just, like, way harder to figure out. And I am a very fearful person. But the other side of that is, like, I know how brave I am because I know how scared I am.
That's it for this week on NPR's Book of the Day. Let us know what you think. You can write to us at bookoftheday@npr.org. I'm Andrew Limbong. The podcast is produced by Danica Panetta and Chloe Weiner and edited by Megan Sullivan. Our founding editor is Petra Mayer. The show elements for this week were produced and edited by Samantha Balaban, Melissa Gray, Karen Miller-Medson, Michael Scotto, Julia Corcoran, Fernando Navarro-Roman, Emiko Tamagawa, and Todd Munt. Beth Donovan is our managing editor. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Ramteen Arablouei from Throughline. Electricity, internet, cell service, all the things we rely on every day can be unreliable or inaccessible in an emergency. But through any storm or crisis, radio is a lifeline. Support the resource that's here for you no matter what. Give today at donate.npr.org.
Ho, ho, ho! Santa here, coming to you from the North Pole, where the elves in our podcast division have just completed work on this season's best gift for public radio lovers, NPR Plus. Give the gift of sponsored free listening and even bonus episodes from your favorite NPR podcasts, all while supporting public media. Learn more at plus.npr.org. Ho, ho, ho!
Hey everybody, it's time to join NPR's All Songs Considered as we celebrate a very tolerable Christmas with a mix of seasonal songs and special guests.
Yeah, we're in for like the saddest Christmas ever, stuck with Robin, who is basically a lump of coal in the shape of a man.
Hear new episodes of All Songs Considered every Tuesday, wherever you get podcasts.